So we have a distinct way that we actually shift people away from problem-focused feedback, which tends to be more negative, which we know triggers our negativity bias, which ultimately does more harm than good, into more solution-focused feedback, which names those desired behaviors, what it is you want the person to do instead of what they're doing that's ineffective. We use a methodology that we call our T-chart exercise. We actually just trained the entire company at Bumble, and the VP of Talent said the T-chart exercise landed so impactfully that it is now part of their day-to-day process and how they help figure out the dialogue and how to shift into more solution-focused feedback.
We take them through this process of identifying what is it that you want instead. What would it look like if they were more effective? And prompting them and continuing to talk with them until they can clearly see in their mind's eye what it would look like if that person were even more effective. And until they can get to that place, what's important to know is that they won't notice it in the other individual until they see it in their own mind's eye first. And when their face lights up, we know they're there.
Okay, so just a quick example. I had a client who I'll call as Jared for now, who was a really high energy, passionate, creative guy, very high up and important and impactful to his agency. But what was coming back from his team in terms of feedback was they weren't feeling seen and heard. They weren't feeling like they had much of a voice. He dominated meetings. He kind of took over even their one-on-ones. They just weren't really...
He talked a lot.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I could relate. He was a talker. So when I was collecting feedback on him, I didn't write these things down because I knew that was going to make him feel really bad and trigger that negativity bias. And really all they were giving me was more on the problem. So what I said, was if Jared was interacting the way you need him to be, what would that look like? What would he be doing? And so I started to get back all kinds of suggestions, like maybe he could ask for our input more, maybe he could facilitate a discussion instead of always being the one talking and leading it, maybe he could come in with more of a curious mindset, or simply just work on his listening skills. So when I went back to talk to Jared, I had 6, 7, 8 new ideas for ways that his team felt he could be more effective in the way of how he could show up differently to create more space for them, to allow them to have a voice, but ultimately really was to talk less.
And what I can see in that is if he's going to start doing more of those things, more of that active listening and all those types of skills, he's naturally going to do less of the talking.
Exactly, and that's what wound up happening. Jared and I worked on which new ways of being, which new behaviors do you want to do more of, so as a result you'll do less of the ones that your team's not as inspired by.